All right, welcome back to the deep dive. You've dropped some really fascinating source material on us today.
Yeah, well, it's interesting.
Specifically, it's an announcement, some excerpts about an upcoming workshop. Feels, well, pretty critical for where wireless tech is heading.
That's right. So we're doing a deep dive into this OpenAirInterface Summer Workshop, and the topic is very sharp, basically, the path to AI-driven 6G networks.
Okay, so let's unpack this then. Our mission here with these sources is really to boil down the key info. What exactly is this event? Where is it happening? When? And maybe most importantly, why does this specific meeting matter for, anyone keeping tabs on the next big thing in connectivity?
Well, what's clear right away from the sources, yeah, this isn't just some run-of-the-mill conference. It's specifically the OpenAirInterface Workshop, and it's set for May 21st and 22nd, 2025.
Right, and the location, that adds something too, doesn't it? The announcement says it's at Ericsson's headquarters, Kista, Sweden. Having a giant like Ericsson host an OAI event, I mean, right there on their home turf, that definitely signals how important the industry sees open air interfaces work right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, it puts OAI sort of firmly in that ecosystem.
Yeah.
It's right alongside the big network providers, especially as they're all looking towards 6G.
Okay, and here's where the source gets really specific and I think quite interesting. It points out one speaker in particular, Tim O'Shea. He's the CTO of DeepSig, scheduled for May 21st, 1 p.m.
And his talk title. That's worth looking at closely. It's listed as Prototyping 6G AI Native Communications and Sensing Capabilities on Open Source and SDR Platforms.
Oh, okay.
That phrase AI native really jumps out when you're thinking 6G.
Right. It sounds like, well, it implies they're not just talking about tacking AI onto the networks we already have. That title suggests, building the very core of 6G with AI kind of baked in from the get-go.
Exactly. An AI native network, which this seems to be pointing towards, suggests intelligence isn't just an extra feature. It's fundamental, part of the architecture itself. Managing communications, maybe even adding new things like sensing the environment.
And connecting that back to the open source and SDR platforms part of his talk, that feels very much like the core of OAI, doesn't it? Prototyping on software-defined radio SDR and, using open source tools.
It absolutely does. The source really emphasizes this approach. Prototyping on open source and SDR,
Yeah.
well, it just allows for much faster development, more flexibility.
Lower barrier to entry.
Yeah, exactly. For researchers, developers, maybe outside the huge corporate R&D labs, it fosters innovation from, a much wider community. And that's really crucial for exploring these sort of radical new ideas like AI native architectures or integrated sensing, instead of being locked into proprietary hardware right away.
So, okay, beyond this specific talk, the announcement itself makes it pretty clear why this workshop is happening now. What's the main driver?
Well, the source explicitly says the workshop's goal is to bring together the OAI community, the experts, developers, researchers, and the wider industry,
Okay.
to really discuss OAI's specific role in making 6G and these AI-driven networks happen. It's framed as kind of a forum, a place to gather insights, define the technical requirements needed for OAI's future roadmap.
So less about showing off shiny finished products, more about kind of collaborative thinking, laying that technical groundwork for what comes next, specifically using OAI's open source angle.
Precisely, yeah. As interest globally in this AI native 6G stuff surges, events like this one become really vital meeting points, especially when they're hosted by key players and focused on these open platforms.
Right.
They're kind of where the theory, the stuff you see in research papers starts getting turned into actual technical requirements, into implementation plans using platforms like OAI. The announcement really positions this as a key step in turning that 6D vision into, well, concrete prototypable steps.
Okay, so let's recap the picture this paints. You've got OAI, the open source player, hosting a major workshop at Ericsson, a huge vendor, bringing the community together, defining the technical path for AI native 6G, and really stressing prototyping on these flexible open platforms like SDR.
Yeah, it really shows how this part of the industry at least is moving from those high-level ideas towards defining the practical steps, the tools needed, and with open source potentially playing a much bigger role than maybe it did in 4G or 5G.
Which brings us back to something really worth mulling over based just on this announcement. Given that repeated emphasis, especially in the talk title, on prototyping on open source and SDR platforms, what does this focus really mean for how accessible and innovative 6G might be compared to older generations? How 4G or 5G were mostly developed, and How might this sort of fundamental shift in how things are developed impact the way AI actually gets integrated and deployed in these future networks?
That's a key question. Definitely something for you to consider as these roadmaps begin to take shape.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.